Hi, and welcome back to e-Gunomics. I'm your host, Kyle McKnight. This episode is sponsored by Cash for Arms. They're one of the nation's largest gun buyers. We have two guests on today. They were on our first episode about American manufacturing. They are Travis Fender and Stuart Pegues. We're going to be continuing our discussion today. Last time it was broad. We'll kind of keep the theme today. We're going to talk about a couple similar brands, Colt, Winchester, and Ruger. So we have a couple pieces of eye candy on display here for all of our viewers. I know our listeners can't see those, but if you ever get a chance to hop on YouTube and actually watch the video, we have some nice little pieces here. Python, a Blackhawk, an old 94, some other pieces. So without further ado, I'm not really going to introduce these two. If you want to learn their background, simply watch the first part of our episode series. So yeah, we'll get started, guys. Very interesting stuff, and really, I think the audience is going to get a dose of reality, hopefully, at least from how we see it from an industry perspective. So, Travis, why don't you start off? We can kind of pick the route you want to take here with this.
Well, let's start with the elephant in the room, Colt. World-renowned, probably the most famous American firearm manufacturer ever. They've made a plethora of different firearms in their history, going back from the days of Sam Colt and such. But there's a reason why, maybe multiple, why they went from being the giant they were maybe in the turn of the century and a bit thereafter to, maybe after World War II, something happened. I don't know. Stu, what do you think?
I mean, y'all know my opinion on Colts. I always say that, Colt hadn't produced anything great since the advent of smokeless powder. So, while there are some products out there that are desirable and people do collect Colts, you definitely see kind of a quality. They didn't grow. They didn't improve their product. They basically said back in the the black powder days that that this was as good as it gets, and they just stopped there. And we talk about the serpent guns all the time being kind of their modern day specialty, and they are good guns.
Yeah.
But if I can't call them great guns, they still suffer from problems that they shouldn't have, and I really would like to see a company like Colt, produce top quality guns, and they just, in my opinion, they don't.
And all these years later, I mean, it's 2024, and their staple products on auction are still their old designs. They're single action Army, they're 1911. Whereas we see other brands like Ruger, and they're still innovating. They're coming out with new products, things that have no connection to kind of a bygone era. Are we ragging on Colt collectors? No, a lot of you guys have knocked it out of the park in terms of value. You bought something and it's worth septuple what it is now. Name some crazy number, congratulations. And they are beautiful pieces. It's Americana, but really we're diving into the kind of the reality here and how it trends on a broader market, like Colt in the 80s as it was compared to today, so there is a little bit of, it's uncomfortable, but there's a little bit of a quality decrease in some of these companies in their manufacturing and their tolerances and their materials used and things like that. Now, I know Colt, they use good materials like we were talking about before this episode. They use good metallurgy and things like that. They've always done that. But the lack of innovation, just kind of stuck in one spot perpetually. The art market kind of works like that in some circles. We've had paintings that the price of them is relative over like 200 years, whereas like guns, a little newer of a market, but still, a little newer of an American market rather, but still. So Travis, we've got these three brands here. We have today Colt, Winchester, and we've got a Ruger. There's a Ruger 1022 hiding for you guys here. It's behind the Winchester, but really I think we were going to choose Ruger as like kind of an outlier for an American gun manufacturer, like someone who's kind of like stepped up and done a little better with what they had, kind of thing.
Especially why I like to say, I think Colt's true downfall starts at the end of World War II, is because Colt had always, especially when you look at World War I or something like that, one of the big markets they were in were military. Like you look at World War I, they made a plethora of different guns for the wartime effort. Yeah. World War II decreases a bit, and then afterwards, you see they really struggle to get a lot of military contracts and stuff like that. You look at You know, they tried with their own AR. It was the 605, I think, or whatever came out with. And they got contracts for it, and even the 1911 is still on. But like once, I think the big thing out of all these manufacturers is that basically they got competition. A lot of foreign innovators like Glock, Beretta, Sig Sauer, and everybody started coming to the American market in like the 70s and 80s and onward now, and really pressed them. Like Colt lost the handgun manufacturer or military contract to Beretta.
Yeah, exactly.
And stuff like that. And then you see law enforcement even, like you see Glocks and everything else coming out, really pushing the market. And basically, Colt doesn't make anything for law enforcement really anymore. They don't have the lawmen, police detectives, or anything like that anymore.
No. Bygone,
Yeah, bygone.
With that being said, Colt really doesn't, they don't design their own guns. I mean, like the 1911 was not their gun.
No,
they were just the first manufacturer of it. Most of their revolvers are based on their older designs, like I'd say, probably one of the modern or somewhat modern guns that Colt hit a home run on is the Colt's Woodsman.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Great little pistol, a little Target 22. It's well produced pistol, but like really, what did Colt contribute to the 1911 besides being its first manufacturer? And then, like, the only thing I could really think of is like the only improvement Colt ever did on the 1911, and nobody really considers that an improvement, is the fire and pin safety mechanism that they put in the Series 80s. I mean, that was designed by a Colt engineer in the 1930s, but like what has Colt done with the 1911?
Do we have a Series 80 right there? Is that a Series 80? Is there a Series 70?
That one is a Series 70.
Okay. Because I see two pieces hiding here behind the books, Stu. Perhaps maybe to be compared to this in terms of just like you said, Travis, competition. These days, the market's big. We have these 1911 style pistols, which are a fraction of the price of some of these Colt guns, and it's just.
I mean, really, back in the day, when you bought a Colt, you took it to a gunsmith and you got it tinted. Because Colt has never really made a great 1911, and there's a lot to be said about ammunition changes over the years, and because the 1911 was never designed to be run with hollow points, modern ammunition. So, it might run ball great, and it might run ball great from the military specifications and the contracts that they were built on. But if you start looking at self-defense, personal defense with a 1911, it's not a great choice. A lot of people will disagree with me, but it's not my choice for a modern day handgun for personal defense. If you're home defense, sure, whatever. But carrying on yourself, it's heavy.
It's heavy.
It has its issues. We won't get into those issues now, but like if you take a Colt and you shake it, it's rattly. It's very loose tolerances, and there's we have a T-sauce over here that's a $300 1911. And made in Turkey, that's made to much higher tolerances. And we could sit here and shake it, and it doesn't make a whole lot of noise. That isn't necessarily the only thing that's important on 1911s, but you're not going to have a really accurate 1911 with loose tolerances, and that's like one of the first things we check. There's other things we could check, of course, but like having a nice slide to frame fit is a sign of good quality guns.
Right.
And I got a $300 1911 made in Turkey that's making far less noises than this Colt.
Yeah, if any of you aren't familiar with T-sauce, they're an affordable, an alternative to some of these American guns because, like you guys are saying, Colts are expensive for what they are, guys. That used model right there in front of us, I mean, that's like, could very well bring $1,000, which, this T-sauce here, like you said, is like what, like $350 or something, and it's a great pistol, okay, for what it is. You could get 3 of them for one used Colt Series 70, okay, so it's like, these are things that people obviously are thinking about in the modern market. Not everyone is a Colt collector in 2024. Some people just want a good 1911. Springfield makes a really good 1911. They're obviously been around, but what do you think, Travis? You have a Springfield, don't you?
Yeah, I have a Springfield I bought some years ago, a mil spec, and I think it was about $500, and it's a really nice modern version of a 1911 A1 for again $500.
Yeah, it's like half the price of a Colt.
Half, even maybe
for a new one. You got a new one, right?
A nicer one.
Yeah.
So you're not going to break the bank. You can buy multiple of them, or you can take all that extra cash and really invest, putting some nice accessories to it, or just buy another gun.
Maybe the gist of this is that we need to direct our energy towards CZ. They of course acquired Colt. Please CZ, you have a great reputation. People love you as a company, as a gun maker. You've
So their shotguns.
yeah.
But they don't make their shotguns.
No. So perhaps if CZ can kind of assume the responsibility of bringing Colt up to that standard that so many of the baby boomer generation and their parents rightfully kind of perceived them as, because they came out of that early 20th century era where they had quite the reputation. They were used by departments. It was just completely America. Colt in America are very synonymous words. So it's like, so CZ's got their work cut out for them, but they're a great company.
And they've done some neat things in the last about 10 or so years. They've been out. They've really, I think, tried to innovate and done a lot of improvement with tolerances in production with modern, very Colts. They've been doing stuff like trying to get into the compact market with really pushing the Mustang and things like that, and then reintroducing the snake guns.
Yeah, reintroducing. Recently. Yeah, we have a new model Python right here. But Stu, from a gunsmith's perspective, sir, do you see CZ as being able to rise to the occasion of bringing those tolerances and everything you were looking for as a gunsmith?
Absolutely, but it's innovation too. Like, look at what CZ did with Dan Wesson and the DSW. I believe the model is. It's kind of a CZ75, which is funny. It's kind of based on a 1911, and then a 1911. So they made the DSW. That's kind of like a sandwich of those two together, and it's a fantastic gun. It doesn't, it's not. Doesn't have these super insane tight tolerances, but from the manufactured, mass-produced perspective, it is a great gun.
Yeah.
And it has the modularity and the ability to be customized to the point where you could make it a race gun, you can make it a limited gun, you can shoot it as a production gun. So you have the options on that gun, and that's something I love that CZ did, was take that Dan Wesson partnership and produce something just amazing, and they did.
Because they were kind of fledgling too, right? As a company, Dan Wesson, they were kind of stagnating, or
I don't know as much about them. Obviously I've seen their products, and Dan Wesson has a rich history for sure. I think primarily, don't quote me on this, but I think he was just trying to get out of it.
Yeah.
Because he'd been doing it for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And I think CZ acquiring them was just the way to go. Now they've had their quality issues too, but me with 1911s, I get very picky.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you guys are listening to somebody that can, has worked for top brands, so his standards are high, rightfully so, coming from the background he comes from. So we've got a couple other brands here. What's the gist with Colt, guys? There's great collector items still. They're wonderful to collect. The market's good for them. If you have a single action Army 3rd gen and you purchased it for $800, in the early 2000s, you're sitting on a $2,200 piece. So we're not saying you made a bad choice being a Colt owner. That's not what we're saying. But we do have Colt in our crosshairs as young critics. We are going to criticize, issues when we see them. We're in the industry. So how about Winchester, Travis? Or what were you going to say before that?
Well, I was just going to say real quick, it's that, there's a reason why they got bought out by CZ.
Yeah.
They got passed by in the market. They literally got passed by from, like I said, people coming from overseas, bring competition. Yeah. And then they lost out on a lot of the markets, the law enforcement and military, even commercial. They were just stagnant, and now they spun their wheels for a long time. Hopefully they can gain traction and improve.
Yeah, we want to see an upward trajectory.
Sure. But to Winchester.
Yeah, Winchester. Yeah.
Well, they're a gun manufacturer that really owes a lot of their notoriety to one guy out, a really obscure figure named John Browning.
Oh yeah, who's that? Yeah.
Our Lord and Savior, the man. We wouldn't be anywhere near we would be today in the firearm industry without that man. He really just innovated.
He invented entire categories of firearms. So
incredible.
There's no one who relates to him.
The repeater, right? He essentially.
He invented, the locked breech semi-automatic handgun.
Yeah.
Everything else before that was blowback. There was some weird. He really invented most of the commercially successful guns. There was definitely some guns out there that shared some of those features, but they weren't always effective. They weren't always great guns, and that's
he made them work.
He made guns that worked, and they worked well. And a lot of his guns are still in service today. And a lot of the older guns were kind of going off subject here,
Yeah.
but with John Browning, a lot of his guns stand the test of time, and that's something that I fear that most modern guns are not. They're just not going to stand the test of times, like say the Auto 5.
Yeah. Yeah, if you've inherited an Auto 5 from your grandfather, you did well. It was definitely a good thing to receive as an heir. It's a piece of Americana. I keep saying that word. It's a classic design. People are still using them. I saw an A5 being shot, actually, last time I went to the range, which I thought was cool. I was like, okay, it's 2024. So, yeah, Winchester kind of... I don't want to give my opinion on them too much. I really want to hear from you guys, but the idea is that it's like they're almost like Colt, and they have those name stays like the 94.
I'll tell you, like
the Model 70.
They owe probably their existence to John Browning, because they were a small company before him, and they really grew up with his designs. And when John Browning was gone, I was looking through the gun manual the other day. I was like, what did they design after John Browning? That's great. That's like an absolute category killer. And there's only three guns, and they were all developed in the 30s that I could come up with. And that was the Winchester Model 21, the Winchester Model 42, which is a shrunken version of the Model 12, but it is a redesigned gun. It's not the same internally. It's not just shrunken 1/3 size parts. It's the actual redesign of the gun. But it shares a appearance to the Model 12, and the other one is escaping me at the moment. I'll think of it in a minute. I'll come back to me on that one.
Yeah. So Winchester.
The Model 70.
Of course, yeah.
Model 70, which is obviously successful.
Yeah, very successful for collectors and shooters alike. That's actually kind of a rare all-around gun in the industry that, yes, they have a collector's market. Yes, they have a shooters. There's still people shooting them, literally, at game. So really, yeah, Model 70. But other than that, guys, are they made? So they're owned by FN now. They're owned by FN now, but their barrels are made in Japan?
They're made all over the world now.
Okay.
There's some production still in the U.S. and South Carolina, but there's a lot of production in Belgium. There's a lot of production in Portugal.
Okay.
There's still some production in Japan. I don't know all the countries they're involved in, but they're spread out. They're not a sole American company, and not like some of the other ones we're getting ready to talk about.
We've got a 94 lever action here from the 19 teens, maybe like 1915 or something like that. Despite it having a large crack in the stock, this is still a very real collector's item. It's going to bring, probably over $700 at auction. That's a very vague market. I haven't really looked at this gun. But the point being is that even in a dilapidated state, these guns are still bringing a great price. So for collectors, Winchester, kind of like Colt, you're not going to go wrong necessarily. But there's just so many great pieces out there that compete with this. I'm thinking the Marlin 336, which we've talked about that already in this series. But the gist is that Winchester, if they're not careful, they're gonna essentially like go the way of Colt, right? They're just gonna like keep losing relevance.
They're producing guns in Turkey now. Turkey is making guns very. They're making guns from other people. They're clones essentially.
Yeah,
and
it's
so
like this
they're
T-sauce here.
Guns, but Turkey's biggest problem is their industry's so new. Their metallurgy is garbage, and it's not that they can't produce good guns or can't have high tolerances. It's that they're producing it for the American market and thinking that they only want to spend $300.
Yep, just pump them out. Yeah,
there is a certain area where $300 for a gun is a perfect fit. Point in case, Ruger and the Ruger American.
Yeah,
I absolutely love that gun for what it fits into.
Let's just segue that right into Ruger. Affordable and perhaps on a different overall trajectory to some of these other American brands. They've done better. You guys would say Ruger's like a winner in terms of an American gun brand.
I think they're number 2 right now when it comes to American manufacturing now.
Everyone knows about the 1022. We've got a bubbled one in front of us, and it's still going to bring $250 at auction. Even it's not even in its original chassis. It's beat up. So they're 1022. The Ruger, the new Ruger 5.7. Okay, people people like it compared to the FN 5.7.
I think they dropped the ball. Smith & Wesson definitely.
You like the Smith one better? Okay.
Smith and PSA of all.
PSA, yeah.
I think they won the 5.7 battles with their pistols. I think the Smith one is the head honcho, and PSA is a very close second.
And then probably Ruger, then probably FN. Yeah.
I honestly, I like the Ruger in pictures, but as soon as I held it in hand,
it felt okay. Yeah.
It has that same cheap feel that the FN has, and I despise the FN for that.
Yeah.
But with that being said, Ruger doesn't make those kind of mistakes often. I mean, they make category killers in almost every subject that they make guns in.
Yeah.
They've had some failures. I mean, you look at the Red Label. It's not that it's a bad gun.
No.
They just couldn't produce it the way they want to produce guns. And the way they produce guns is they make very affordable guns that are well made.
Exactly.
They're not expensive guns, but they make well-made, affordable guns, and that's where they won. That's why they are the company that they are. Is they have made category kills. They fixed some of Colt's problems, and Colt should have been doing that. You know?
Is that a Blackhawk there in the front?
Yeah.
Yeah, a new Blackhawk.
Nice.
You know, they when you carried a Colt back in the day, you had to carry on an empty cylinder. You know, because if you dropped the gun, it could go off. You know, Ruger fixed that.
Yeah, with the transfer bar.
The transfer bar.
Ruger made the gun strong enough to withstand some of those super hot Elmer Keith style era super hot loads that they were doing back in the day.
Yeah.
So, you know, they made the gun stronger and better able to take these features. And then, your 5-shot cylinder is, a 6-shot cylinder, but you got to carry one on an empty. You don't have to do that with a Ruger. They invented that feature. So.
Yeah, and you use that important word, affordable, too. Rugers are not like god-awful expensive. Really, too many, Red Label 28 gauges, those get expensive. So every brand has expensive guns. Ruger, though, mostly affordable. Ruger 5.56, great quality 5.56 AR. Why would you spend $350 on a Delton or whatever when you can spend just a little more, $500, $450 sometimes? You can get a Ruger AR.
The AR market with $2,000.
They did.
Did not do very
those
well.
Piston ones, no, they didn't. They didn't do very well. Those Piston.
Like I said, Ruger learns from their mistakes.
They evolve. They adapt, and they don't just kind of stagnate. Is the gist there?
Like
with
you
Ruger.
definitely look at like a Blackhawk or a Vaquero when you handle it. It feels like a true modern take on a single action army. If you look at like a 2nd gen Colt or even 3rd gen, it just okay. A little bad weather here, guys. It feels archaic. It doesn't feel. It feels like
that's a great word. It does.
Yeah, it feels old. Yes, with new
archaic
materials.
Yeah, it's like
it just doesn't feel like fresh, if you will. But like I'll tell anybody, like if you want a single action army, in my opinion, best bang for buck is a Vaquero. And hell, even a Blackhawk. The thing with a Blackhawk, you can get it chambered in everything. You get them in 30 carbine, 32 H&R, 357, 44. There's.
And that's really the gist of this episode, guys. That's really the main thing here. Put these brands to the fire as a consumer. Buy a quality product at an affordable price. I'm not saying don't collect Colt, don't collect Winchester. In fact, if you do, you might even be in great shape. But these brands, Ruger, Savage to an extent, so, these brands like Ruger, Smith & Wesson to an extent, they're worthy of our consumerism. They're trying to innovate. They're trying to adapt.
You look at Ruger; they didn't exist until after World War II.
Exactly.
Compared to like Winchester and Colt and Smith & Wesson, these are age-old, American brands. But Ruger came out of that, and now is, like I said, is number 2, and they have a reputation. They have a long laundry list of innovative guns that's very popular on the market and respected by gunsmiths.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, this has been another great episode of e-Gunomics. We've covered more of the American manufacturing scene here. And, like I said, let's put these brands to the fire as consumers. Let's actually kind of have high standards and demand quality, and I think that'll go a long way with what they put out in the next couple of years here. But from a market perspective, guys, Ruger, great company, affordable pieces. Springfield Armory makes a great affordable 1911, for half the price of that Series 70 we showed you. TSOS, if you're interested in an overseas clone, they're actually great little pieces. So we'll continue to talk about these pieces. This program is structured into these kind of deep dives, and then we're going to have similar, more simplified market reports where we actually give you like Firearmland auctions and things like that. We're going to cover what things close at, so you have a good idea and you can be an informed consumer. So this has been e-Gunomics. I'm your host, Kyle McKnight. This program is sponsored by Cash for Arms, and we've had our two wonderful guests today, Travis and Stu. Thank you guys very much.